Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world, or whatever time you'll be watching this video. Now, guys, some devastating news to tell you today about a family of 3 who were found dead after their power was shut off. Now, there are 3 people dead. Their electricity had been reportedly disconnected. A generator was being used inside the home. And now a North Carolina city is facing growing questions over what happened and whether its utility policies went too far. But here's the part that we need to be extremely careful about. Authorities have not publicly established that the electricity shutoff caused the deaths. They are investigating whether a generator may have contributed to what happened. At the same time, residents are demanding answers about utility bills, payment policies, power disconnections, and a city government that has already been under scrutiny over its billing system. And just 1 week after the family was found dead, Rocky Mount's City Council voted 6-2 against another temporary moratorium on utility disconnections. So what exactly happened inside that home? Why was the family's electricity disconnected? What happened to their utility bill? And why are hundreds of other Rocky Mount residents also caught up in this dispute? Today we're separating the confirmed facts from the allegations because this story is bigger than one power bill. It's about what happens when a family's ability to keep the lights on collides with a city's responsibility to collect money. And the consequences may have been devastating. The story begins in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. On August 3rd, police conducted a welfare check at a mobile home in the Kingsway Mobile Home Park. Inside, investigators found 3 dead. They were identified by relatives as Tracey Swann, Kenny Swann, and 20-year-old Mahala Scurlock, who had been adopted by Tracey Swann. 3 dogs were also found inside the home. According to reporting from WRAL, police arrived at approximately 10:45 that morning. Family members had become concerned after Tracey failed to show up for a planned family shopping trip. Then, a relative reportedly went to the home and became alarmed after noticing a strong odor. Police entered the residence and discovered the 3 bodies. There was no indication of a threat to the surrounding neighborhood. And Rocky Mount Police Chief Martin McCoy said investigators did not suspect foul play. But there was another critical detail. The home's electricity had recently been disconnected. Family members said the household had been dealing with a utility balance of more than $2,000. And investigators were looking into whether a generator had been running inside the home. That detail is crucial because generators can produce carbon monoxide, which is an odorless and potentially deadly gas. But at the time of this report, investigators had not officially determined that carbon monoxide caused these deaths. The North Carolina Office of the Chief Medical Examiner was expected to determine the official cause of death. So let's make this distinction very clear. The family was found dead after their power had been disconnected. A generator was reportedly being used. Authorities investigated whether that generator played a role. But there is currently no confirmed finding that the city caused the deaths. That distinction matters. Now we get to the part that has triggered outrage across Rocky Mount. Family members said the household owed more than $2,000 on its utility account. According to relatives, the family attempted to make a partial payment, but they said the city would not accept the partial payment and require the balance to be paid in full to restore service. That claim has become central to the public controversy, because if you're behind on a utility bill, there are two very different questions. One is whether you owe the money. The other is what happens when you cannot pay the entire balance immediately. Those questions are now being debated intensely in Rocky Mount. And there is an important piece of context. The city's utility billing system had already become a major source of controversy before the family's deaths. Thousands of customers became concerned in late 2025 after receiving 2 utility bills in 1 month. Residents understandably wondered, did the city bill us twice? A subsequent investigation by the North Carolina State Auditor found that customers were not actually double billed. Instead, auditors found that problems with billing schedules and internal controls created delays and confusion. In other words, the bills looked suspicious, but the audit did not conclude that customers had been improperly charged twice. That's important because some online claims have blurred those two issues. The audit did, however, identify significant problems with the city's billing operations. And that history matters because the deaths occurred at a time when Rocky Mount residents were already deeply frustrated with their utility system. So why were the power shutoffs happening? And here's where the city's side of the story enters. Now, Rocky Mount says it did not simply wake up one morning and start disconnecting hundreds of residents without warning. According to information released by the city, customers included in the initial wave of service disconnections had not made payments on their utility accounts since October 2025. The city said those customers were given more than 6 months from December 2025 through July 2026 to pay outstanding balances or establish payment arrangements before standard utility account practices resumed. This is a significant fact because it means the city's position is essentially this. These were not sudden disconnections after one missed bill. The city says customers had substantial time to address their outstanding balances, but residents have raised a different concern. They say some bills were unusually high. They say they had trouble getting workable payment arrangements. And some say they were unable to negotiate partial payments that would keep their electricity connected. That dispute is now playing out publicly. At one point, Rocky Mount had roughly 300 customers on the list of households whose power had been disconnected. And during the August 10th City Council meeting, residents came forward to describe what they had experienced. One resident told the council that she had struggled to arrange a payment plan and said her electricity remained disconnected. Another resident said she had slept in her car because the vehicle had air conditioning. Those stories illustrate why this debate has become so emotional. Because on paper, a utility bill is a debt, but inside a home during a North Carolina summer, electricity isn't just another bill. It's refrigeration, it's air conditioning, it's medical equipment for some people, it's communication, and ultimately, it's basic livability. August 10, Rocky Mount City Council members faced residents demanding answers. The timing was impossible to ignore. Exactly 1 week earlier, 3 members of the Swann family had been found dead. Residents were angry. Some demanded that the city reconsider its utility disconnection policies. Others called for resignations. and a proposal emerged to temporarily halt utility disconnections for customers who were behind on their bills. Council rejected the proposal moratorium. The vote was 6-2. Council members cited concerns including the lack of specific information and the potential financial consequences for the city. That decision immediately intensified the controversy. Because to critics, the message was simple. 3 people had died after their electricity was disconnected, and the city was still willing to shut off power. But city officials pushed back against that interpretation. The mayor defended the council's decisions and pointed out that residents can accumulate substantial unpaid balances. The city's argument is essentially that a municipality utility cannot operate indefinitely without collecting payment. And that's not an unreasonable argument. A utility system has employees to pay. It has infrastructure to maintain. It has electricity to purchase. And it has other customers who are paying their bills. If large numbers of customers stop paying, somebody eventually absorbs that cost. So the real question isn't, should people have to pay their utility bills? Of course they should. The harder question is, what should a city do when someone genuinely cannot pay? Should there be an automatic payment plan? Emergency assistance? Income-based protections? Medical exemptions? Longer repayment periods? Or temporary protections during extreme heat? That's the policy debate now facing Rocky Mount. And then there's another uncomfortable piece of this story. The city's utility system has already been criticized by state auditors. The North Carolina Office of the State Auditor examined Rocky Mount's billing system after residents complained about receiving 2 bills in 1 month. The audit did not find that customers were actually double billed, but auditors found unauthorized and undetected changes to billing schedules that created delays between meter readings and billing. The audit also highlighted broader financial and management concerns involving the city, and it revealed that 2 Rocky Mount City Council members had accumulated more than $30,000 in combined outstanding utility bills. Those council members later paid the balances. That finding has understandably fueled public anger. Residents struggling to keep their lights on are now looking at city leaders who were themselves identified in an audit as having significant unpaid utility balances. But again, we have to separate the facts from the rhetoric. The audit does not establish that those council members' unpaid bills caused the Swann's family's death. It doesn't establish that the city intentionally overcharged the Swann family. And it doesn't establish the family's utility bill was incorrect. Those are separate questions. What the audit does establish is that Rocky Mount's utility billing operation had significant problems that warranted state scrutiny. And that context makes the current controversy even more explosive. So let's stop for a moment and separate what we know from what remains unanswered. 3 people, Tracey Swann, Kenny Swann, and Mahala Scurlock, were found dead inside their Rocky Mount home on August 3rd. Their electricity had reportedly been disconnected. A generator was reportedly being used. Police investigated whether the generator may have contributed to the deaths. Police said they did not suspect foul play. The official cause of death had not yet been publicly established in the reporting available at the time of this broadcast. We also know the family was reportedly facing a utility balance of more than $2,000. And we know Rocky Mount had resumed standard utility disconnection practices after a period during which customers were given additional time to pay or make arrangements. We know hundreds of customers have been affected by utility disconnections, And we know the City Council voted 6-2 against another temporary moratorium. But here's what we don't know. We don't know yet the official cause of death. We don't know whether carbon monoxide poisoning will ultimately be determined to have caused or contributed to the deaths. We don't know whether the family's utility balance was accurate. We don't know precisely what conversations took place between the family and city officials regarding partial payment. And we don't know whether any city policy violation occurred in connection with the family's account. Those questions need evidence, not social media speculation, not political slogans, but evidence. And that's what makes this story so important, guys, because this isn't simply a story about 3 deaths. It's about what happens when a government agency has to balance financial responsibility against human vulnerability. The city has a legitimate responsibility to collect money. Residents have a legitimate expectation that their bills will be accurate and that payment policies will be administered fairly. And families facing financial hardship need a realistic way to keep essential services running. All 3 things can be true at the same time. But when something goes horribly wrong, people have the right to ask, could it have been prevented? Was there a warning? Was there a safer alternative? Was there a payment arrangement that could have worked? Did the city's policies function as intended? And did anyone recognize that this particular household might have been at risk? Those questions deserve answers, but they deserve verified answers. For the Swann family, these questions are not political, they're personal. 3 people are gone, and no investigation, policy change, or city council vote can bring them back. But if the investigation ultimately determines that the deaths were connected to generator use after the home lost electricity, then the conversation about utility shutoffs becomes even more urgent. Not because the city should provide unlimited free electricity, but because communities need systems that recognize when a debt problem can become a safety problem. And Rocky Mount now has a very difficult responsibility. Find out exactly what happened, be transparent about what went wrong, and determine whether its policies need to change. The City Council has already rejected another temporary moratorium, but officials have said the city's utility payment policies are still being reviewed. So this story is not over. And the most important piece of evidence may still be missing. The official determination of how these 3 people died. Until that answer comes, anyone claiming to know exactly who is responsible is getting ahead of the evidence. What we can say right now is this: 3 members of one family were found dead after their electricity had been disconnected. A generator is part of the investigation. Hundreds of other Rocky Mount residents are dealing with utility disconnections, and a city already facing questions about its billing system is now under intense public scrutiny. The question isn't simply whether people should pay their bills. The question is whether a city can collect those debts without putting vulnerable residents in danger. And that is a question Rocky Mount cannot afford to ignore. I'm Social Spectator. If you want news without the hype, facts first, context second, and accountability always, subscribe to the Social Spectator. Thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one.